Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our coffee night chat for this is March. Yes, I almost forgot the month right off the top of my head. Thank you all for joining us here tonight and for spending your Monday evenings with us. I know it's not our regularly scheduled evening, but we wanted to make sure that we tried to hold this event as close as possible to Transgender Day of Visibility, which is this week. So thank you very much for accommodating and for joining us tonight. We at Pflag affirm that we're all treaty people, and we acknowledge that York region and the municipalities that we serve are located on the lands of two treaties. These treaties are signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the First Nations of the Williams Treaty, who are the Mississaugas of Alderville, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Scugog Island, and the Chippewas of Beausoleil, Rama, and Georgina Island, who is our closest neighbor and partner in York region. To honor this agreement, we will take up our responsibility to be respectful of their traditions, knowledges, and inherent rights as sovereign nations. We will respect their relationship with these lands and recognize that our connection to this land is through the continued relationship with these First Nations. We acknowledge our shared responsibility to respect and care for the land and the waters for future generations. And it's with that we always bring that approach to our coffee night chats. And it's here at these events where we host in our Zoom webinars. We are recording here, but the only folks that will be recorded here are myself and our guest here tonight. None of your names will be mentioned here tonight. And so feel free, we want you to participate using the chat and the Q&A features that are available here. We'll be sure to not use your name, and if that happens by accident, then this doesn't get live streamed. So we'll be editing that out with the sound before that goes up on our YouTube page. And if you know of anyone who wasn't able to join us here tonight live, we do post our coffee night chats. If this is your first time joining us, we do post our coffee night chats to our YouTube page, so they're available for repeat views. So if you would like to view this again, or other coffee night chats that we've had over the last few months and last year, feel free to do that. The YouTube hits are great to see, honestly. And if this is your first time joining us in your first Pflag event, let's introduce you. Well, my name is Tristan. I'm the president of Pflag York Region. I use he/him pronouns. And Pflag, if you're not familiar, is an LGBTQ2 support education and resource network. And so there are chapters across the world, many chapters across Canada. And what our bread and butter is are support meetings and other events that we like to hold. And depends on the capacity of each chapter. And with us, we try to hold these special events where we try to bring on really special community members or groups and highlight the work that they're doing, and also some presentations and webinars and different kind of educational opportunities to better serve not just our queer community, but also family and friends and those who are allies and those who have queer folks in their lives and who want to better support them. And this month, it's really no different. This month, it's a celebration. It's a celebration of trans visibility. And we're observing Trans Day of Visibility by highlighting the incredible work of the Trans Canada Project, and to have a member of the Trans Canada Project come online and to share their journey with us. And so without further ado, we're going to actually start with a little video package from the Trans Canada Project. I'm going to share my screen and hope that the audio and video sync well. I know that sometimes doesn't happen when we're streaming events, but we're going to hope for the best here. And I would love to introduce the incredible team and the work of the Trans Canada Project.
Hi, and welcome to the Trans Canada Project. I have a question for you. Have you ever met a trans person? You know, a lot of people don't think they have, and yet they just might have. A lot of people in this world feel alone, like they can't relate to anybody else, like they're just all their own person. And when you're trans, that is amplified so much because you can feel like you are the only person who feels this way. And sometimes it can be very hard to find other people who you can relate to. That's what the Trans Canada Project is all about. We want people to meet trans people, to hear their stories, to get to know them, so that they will know that we are real people just like everybody else. Let me introduce you to a few right now.
Ani, Bojo, Natigandichnakas, Kirlakanunjaba, Makwadodem. My English name is Heidi. I identify as being a two-spirit person. I use the pronouns they, them, she, her.
Hi, my name's Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Rochelle.
My name is Jimei Lee.
My name's Eladon, and I use they, them pronouns.
So my name is Diane Jackson.
So my name is Cash.
My name is Diane Skull. Hi, my name is Abigail Curlew.
My name's Kaylee.
Hi, my name is Madison Poser.
Hello, my name is Riley, and my pronouns, I have no idea what they are right now.
Hi, I'm Luna, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a trans woman.
Hi, I'm Andy.
Hi, my name is Shauna Wiseman.
I'm Elisa Gonzalez.
My name is Seth Compton.
My name is Vincent.
Hi, my name is Lisa Monroe.
My name is Aurora Claire Boren. My pronouns are she and her.
Okay. So hi, my name is Carly Summers.
Hi, my name's Adam Shubrook.
My name is Chloe Anne-Sophie Veilleux.
Hello, my name is Kermit Crowley. I am a 19-year-old disabled trans man.
Okay, so now you've met 24 trans people. You can go and listen to their whole stories on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/transcanadaproject. You know, every one of the cis community is different. Every one of you is different from everybody else. We're all unique. We have our own likes and our dislikes, the things that we can do well, the things that we can't do well. And the trans community is no different in that way. It's not fair to paint the entire trans community with one brush just because of this one thing that we have in common. Even that one thing can be so diverse. What are some of the things that we do? Here's just a little sample of some of the things that some of our friends in the trans community do for a living.
I am a PhD candidate in sociology and criminology.
I am a graphic designer.
I work in marketing and e-commerce.
Professional science writer and a less professional pet owner and collector of vintage action figures.
I am a 2S LGBTQ outreach worker for a local school board.
I'm a licensed plumber for over 30 years.
And I'm an actor, dancer, and singer.
I work in the video game industry and has recently joined Relic Entertainment, where I am a senior core technical design.
Kelly and I, in doing the Trans Canada Project, we don't profess to be experts in gender studies or really understand everything about what being trans is about. All we want to do is share some of these stories of some of our friends in the trans community so that you get to hear a little bit about who they are. Some of the struggles that they've had to face in learning about themselves, in trying to figure out how to navigate this journey of being trans, has given them wisdom that many people don't have the opportunity to gain. And in some of their stories, you can hear some of that wisdom. Here's just a few examples.
A lot of the other questions I would get are people who just have doubts about their feelings about being trans, where they are worried that it's just a phase or something. And I'm able to tell them that these feelings are natural. A lot of trans women have doubts, trans men as well have these doubts. I had doubts early on as well. But in the end, I'm so much happier living life as a woman and being seen as a woman and presenting as a woman. And that sort of has made me realize that I'm meant to be a woman.
The biggest thing would be to be patient. You know, it comes it comes together. It does work itself out. It does make a difference in the end.
Embody the version of yourself that feels right. You do not owe anyone a specific version of yourself.
Everybody has their own journey. Everybody is special. Everybody has their own path that they are going on. But if you judge yourself, it goes back to the saying, be yourself because everyone else is taken. And you can't go around expecting to have the same experience as the person next to you.
So now that you have met some of us, I hope that you will join us on this journey across Canada to meet more trans people, to listen to the stories that are provided. Maybe in doing so, you'll become a better ally to the trans community, or maybe you will find yourself in some of those stories.
Of course I'm muted. Of course I'm going to be the one who does it. Such a wonderful video, such a great video that I'm sure that you're very that you were very involved in putting together, Cary. And for everyone here, let's officially introduce Cary to our event. Thank you very much for joining us. Just a quick note, we have been collaborating on this event with one of our community partners, Care Community Connections. And if you're just joining in, my apologies for perhaps showing a broken link. Maybe it was missing a character or things like that. So I'm sorry if you missed the first couple minutes of our event, but we are recording and it will be available to catch the full thing up. So thank you very much for your patience there. And Cary, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here. Yeah, it's exciting always to be out here sharing all this stuff. It's great.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you for joining us again tonight on a Monday night. And before we get into you just sharing a little bit about yourself and your journey, it's become routine here for our coffee night chats to start with a little icebreaker, some rapid fire questions. It's kind of like a late night style rapid fire questions. And yeah, let's get going. So first off, sunrise or sunset?
Definitely sunrise. I'm an early to bed, early to rise person for sure. I have a long trip to go to work these days too, so I have to get up early, get a couple of boys to school, get off to work. Yeah, so I have to go to bed early.
Oh, I wish I shared the same sentiments. I would like to be a morning person, but I stay up too late anyways. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
That's a tough one. I think I like it either way. I don't often have it, but when I do have it, I like it. So I think it's okay.
Okay. How do you usually start your day?
Well, like I said, I'm an early person, so I like to get up and just take my time, so get myself ready, go have my breakfast and sit and read a little bit of news. And I don't feel rushed when I'm trying to get out the door, right? Everything just kind of flows nice.
What's your favorite color?
Red.
Okay.
I don't know why.
It's hard for me to explain to you. There was a period of time in my life where red was my favorite color. Maybe it was just because it was not blue and everyone around me liked blue and it was just very out there.
I've been wearing a lot of browns days, so maybe brown. I don't know, but that's a weird color though, isn't it? Nobody ever says brown.
Favorite board game, if you have a favorite board
game? I really like Risk, but nobody will play it with me because it takes too long, right?
I love a good game of Risk myself. It's hard to find.
Okay.
You gotta invest time. Okay, yes, it's happening.
Kelly playing once recently for the first. I don't think she played it before, and she conquered the world. So like she's in now.
Favorite movie?
Okay. It's a little embarrassing to say. Young Frankenstein.
Oh, that's not
You
embarrassing.
know that movie?
I know that movie. It's been a while since I've seen it. Like, I think I watched it when I was young, actually, but so it's been a while. But
It just tickles my funny bone. All those weird jokes. It's my kind of humor.
what was the last song you listened to?
Oh goodness. Um. Okay. Truth be told, I'm not really a big music person. I don't listen to a lot of music. I'd rather listen to podcasts on my way home than music. Um, so I have really eclectic tastes in music, and I have an Irish background. So some of the stuff that I listen to is basically Irish folk style. So probably you wouldn't know the Chieftains or Moira Brennan. Um, yeah.
Okay. Well, you mentioned a podcast. What was the last podcast you listened to?
Oh goodness, that's gonna be a test too. Trying to remember the name of it.
Or maybe most memorable that you.
I think it's called "You're Wrong About." That was the one I was listening to last. Yeah, but I listened to a whole range of things. Whatever's on Google Podcasts, I just hit the next one that's there, and they just scroll up through. A lot of TED Talks.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, but you can go down a rabbit hole TED Talks as you could with YouTube.
Absolutely.
Just, yeah. Cake or pie?
I would have to say pie.
And
Probably
what?
apple pie.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's a
Definitely
staple. It's a classic.
now you make it apple crumble, it's even better. But
The crumble's really underrated. You get the
yeah,
best of
right.
both worlds sometimes.
And you don't have to eat that mushy crust.
And finally, what's the best thing to happen to you this month?
This month, oh well, I started a new job, so that's got to be it right now. Although, although as the weeks go on and I get tireder and I'm getting more stressed out just trying to learn all this new stuff, it doesn't necessarily feel like the best thing, but I do think it's a good thing. So, yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you again for joining us. You made it through the rapid fire questions. I hope everyone got to know you a little bit better. And with that said, the floor is yours to take it away and to share a little bit about yourself and your journey. And the reins are yours.
Great. Well, I kind of would like to share a little bit. Sorry, I'm trying out a new voice. This is this is part of the trans journey, right? Is figuring out what you do, what you don't do, what works, what doesn't work, and starting a new job. I'm kind of diving in on the end. I'll come back to the beginning in a minute, but um, you know, diving into a new job, it was a bit of a challenge for me to decide whether I wanted to try and work on my voice a little bit or not. And I'll just throw this out there now. One of those things was trying to let other people be more comfortable with who I am. And part of that is presenting in a way that makes them more comfortable, which then in turn makes me more comfortable. So even though I wasn't really dysphoric or anything about my voice, the way it was, as you heard it on the video, I'm still not really disturbed that it goes both ways. Um, it does help other people to see me more the way I feel. And so when they see me more the way I feel, then I feel a little bit better about myself. So that's something I've been working on. Anyway, like I said, that was kind of diving off the deep end there, but I'll kind of go back and talk a little bit about my journey. And then hopefully get to the Trans Canada project and what we've been doing with that too, because that's all wrapped up together in our life. So I probably started this journey myself about 4 years ago now. Of course, those of us who are trans, we've been trans all our lives. It's just coming to the point where we can admit it to ourselves or realize what it really is and then move forward on that journey. And it took a lot for me because I grew up in a very evangelical home, and
this was wrong. This was sinful, and I had a hard time struggling with that and wrestling with that, and I had a lot of internalized transphobia and um, kept trying to push it away because it was not supposed to be part of my life. Um, I had a moment just a little less than 4 years ago that was really important to me, and I have to say my faith is very strong, and even though my religion is pretty much gone now, my faith is still very strong. And I did have a moment where I felt like God was saying to me, you know what, Cary, it's okay. I love you, and I love you the way you are, and I accept you. And from that moment on, my journey totally changed, and I started to accept myself. I started to love myself more, and I started to figure this out. And I can't say that everything has been absolutely wonderful along the way. There's been some bumps, particularly with family, but it definitely has been the right thing for me to be able to get on this journey. Along that way, um, one of the things that scared me the most was I didn't know a lot of trans people. I hadn't met that many trans people, and that whole narrative that I had been hearing that trans people were just weird and not right. It was still rattling around in my head, and it was difficult to get rid of that. So part of the process for me was, as it is for many people, to go on the internet and try and find stories of trans people that I could relate to, that would help me inform myself about who I was. And when I did that, there were a few things that I discovered. First of all, there wasn't a ton of good voices out there, and there definitely wasn't any real Canadian voices out there that we could find. I did get involved with a local group here in Kitchener-Waterloo called Spectrum, and got involved in a trans group there, which was amazing to start to get to know some other trans people. And that helped me find myself a little bit. There were a couple of other groups that I was involved in too that were absolutely fantastic. And I met Kelly through that group, the Spectrum group, and the two of us kind of hit it off as friends, and we started talking about this idea that we had never seen these stories. My recent background, because I've had far too many, which maybe Tristan will ask me about later, but but my recent background was basically as a wedding photographer and videographer, and I had been doing some little video projects on other topics. So it was kind of a natural progression for me to be able to do these video projects with stories of trans people. My problem, though, is I'm not terribly organized in the background and follow up with people and all of those bits, and that's where Kelly really shines. So it was a good team to put together, Kelly and I, to be able to produce the Trans Canada project. And in doing that, we got to meet so many other trans people, and it really has been amazing. It's been a huge part of our journey, and a real blessing to us. We've got to meet people from all walks of life. So different, so different. I think we're at about 39, I think, videos now. So that's a lot of people to meet, a lot of trans people to meet. And of course, you get to go and watch the stories, but when we're producing the videos, we actually get to chat with these people outside of the recordings, and even get to meet some of them face to face, and share our lives a little bit more, which is extremely cool. They're all very special people, and we've appreciated every one of them. So that's been a part of my journey and finding myself. And it didn't happen right away. I mean, if you go back and watch some of the initial videos, I'm a little awkward with things. Maybe it doesn't look like that. I don't know, but I definitely felt that way. When Kelly and I first got together and started the whole thing, we had difficulty even just going out in public, and being trans in public. But what we discovered was that it really wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. Everybody out there was so welcoming and kind and accepting. And I think maybe those who weren't were at least smart enough to keep their mouths shut and didn't say anything to us. So we definitely found ourselves being able to go out there and just be ourselves in public. And that's continued to be more and more. And as I said, I've just started a new job in the last month. And in that job, I'm able to just be me. And everybody is very accepting. And it was a little scary too, because the job is actually dealing with the public. And in doing that, I was worried, okay, so the job might be great. The people that I'm working with might be very accepting, but I have to deal with public that I really don't know whether they're going to be accepting or not. But even there, I'm finding that I'm not having any problems, and I'm very pleasantly surprised and pleased with the way all of that's been going. So, Tristan, you came back on video there. I'm just going to get you. You can jump in any time, or I just keep going.
Well, you can keep going. That's okay with me. But I guess just to encourage folks as well, we have the Q&A feature as well, so feel free to hop on in with any questions that you have. I forgot I had a little tiny blurb here about the Trans Canada project, just in case folks are unfamiliar. But I think something that we both have in common is that I can be a little disorganized myself, I guess, in keeping things together. The Trans Canada Project mission is to try to highlight and connect as many individuals across the country, and to really make more visible and more relatable trans people, folks who are questioning, and folks who are just seeking to know and to better discover trans individuals. And I think that like a key thing that I really like from the video as well, that we say at Pflag too, is we don't claim to know everything about a queer lived experience, so whether you're gay or trans or bi or whatever, from us. And it's really just about connecting folks with each other and just gaining a better understanding through just understanding each other's just unique lived experiences. And I think that's just an incredible thing about the Trans Canada project. Personally speaking, when I first started volunteering with people like 3 years ago, I didn't know everything about every single identity or how they were defined. And you can really get caught up in trying to know the definitions of things, because that's how you feel like you're going to better connect with people. But when you break down the barrier of that, and you just connect with someone just the way that they want to be seen, through just understanding them, that's where I think the true connection and the true understanding and the true not to overuse the word, the true connection just really happens, right?
And one of the big discoveries for me has been the necessity for diversity. Living in the world that I used to live in, it was very much about being homogeneous. It was much about being this one thing, and everybody was trying to push you into this one mold, the thing that you're supposed to be. But when I began to accept myself and explore this and figure this thing out, I started to see the diversity in other people and see the differences, that none of us are the same, and that is something the world needs. We need each other. We don't just need each other to be the same so that we all work together. Like an ant colony or something. We need each other to be ourselves and to share all of those pieces of ourselves, because when we do, every one of us benefits from all of those pieces.
I love that. A question in the chat here that I think really ties into something that you said early on. So the question here is, how long would you say it took you to fully accept yourself? And I think that really ties into an interesting point that you made as well, where, just you sharing that you're practicing your voice, and that you're doing that almost in a way just to allow people to see you the way that you want to be seen as well. I think there's even an element of not just accepting yourself, but accepting and maybe giving yourself the permission to allow people, or to give them a little bit more of a leg up into them seeing you how you want to be seen, in a way. If that makes sense.
The question, how long has it taken to fully accept myself? I can tell you my perspective, but I have to say right up front that I think that's something that's very different for everybody as well. Because just quickly, in Kelly's case, she come to the point where she discovered who she was, and almost immediately ripped the band-aid off, and she was just her, right? For me, it was a much longer process. I think probably for me, it was out of necessity because of my family. Um, I I have a very close family, and I appreciate my family, and I did not want to lose my family. And so, from my perspective, it was hard to make that shift, and I couldn't do it all at once. And on my family's side too, it took them time to accept that as well, and they're still on that journey, and I still have to be careful. But as far as how long it actually took me, I'd say I say I spent about a year navel gazing, right? Where it was really a lot about me. I was spending a lot of time trying to figure myself out, and it didn't it so I wasn't really public about it or being totally out there. But I was slowly coming to terms with it and discovering who I was. And after that year, I had kind of figured it out, but I still wasn't entirely public. So it probably took me another year to really kind of get myself out there and present myself the way I felt. So for me, probably about 2 years, and the journey isn't over yet. You just said, Tristan, about the voice. Yes, definitely, that's a relatively new thing. Um, there's other parts of the journey that are yet to come. Things that happen. When you're trans, you start to consider other possibilities of things that you can do, and those are all still in the future as well. So, um, yeah, the journey continues.
And I guess even on a similar note, in terms of accepting yourself, I'm always very interested in discovering per folks' relationship with faith. And I personally had a kind of an interesting, I think, experience in a relationship with faith. And in a way, it almost seems like you have to, or like there's elements of thinking that you want your faith to accept you, but there's also maybe elements of maybe accepting faith in yourself in a different way. And you even highlighted it in kind of how you phrase things, from being evangelical and religious to being a person of faith. And I'm interested in really unpacking that and what the difference is to you between those two, of being religious and evangelical to being a person of faith.
Yeah. Well, full disclosure, I was a pastor for 12 years. So faith was really an important part of my life. And it was in so many ways that I connected with God. Um, and it was probably part of my biggest struggle to come to terms with this, because everything I was told was that being trans and being with God are incompatible. Um, I I've discovered that that's just not true. Um, and in fact, since that moment that I talked about, where I really felt that revelation from God, that um, I feel like God has really led me. I talked about diversity. The same thing applies in my faith. Realizing that, although as a Christian, I might have particular views of how the whole God thing works. That's just my perspective, right? Where I'm learning from the diversity of other faiths, how that what I believe is the same God is acting and speaking to other people in different ways. And I think we can all learn from each other in that way. So my faith, like I say, is still very strong. And in fact, I think it's probably growing more because of this. Um, but there was a lot of religion, and by religion I mean all the rules and the man-made stuff that comes out of the community, basically, right? We build these little laws around things that tell us how we're supposed to be, and then they become more important than God, and that's just not right. So I've been learning to kind of set those things aside and just continue on the faith journey, for what it is.
That's great. And as a comment on that, I'm caught in a similar position. I chose to leave the church because it's difficult to poise for change, and the only vehicle for that is to leave. And uh, I, yeah, it's I I feel like it maybe not. I guess in depending on your faith and your background, sometimes you might feel like that is the only choice is to leave or to maybe change perspective. I think that's maybe what I'm personally
Yeah.
struggling too. It's
Well,
like is it
well,
leaving? Like is leaving seems very finite, right?
yeah. Well, if you compare it to an abusive relationship in a marriage, absolutely, you don't stick around and be abused, right? But that doesn't mean that when you leave, you can't find another person who's going to love you, right? So, like we did an interview. Junia Joplin is one of the people we interviewed, who is a pastor at MCC Church in Toronto, and she enlightened us to the fact that there is more than half of the churches now that are accepting of LGBTQ and in the Christian community. That's amazing. So we think that when we're in this church that has these different views that that's what all the churches are like, but it's not true, right? There are plenty of churches that are accepting and will not only invite you in to be part of the community, but will celebrate who you are. Love
And I like
does truly.
I like how you put it too. It's you can find someone else who's going to accept you for who you are. You'll find another faith, and there's certainly a lot out there. At least in York Region too, we have a very strong partnership with Richmond Hill United Church, and that's one that we've partnered with for a very long time. I know Care Community Connections has as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, even in the Bible, you read it doesn't say the church is God. It says the church is the bride of Christ, right? So when we start elevating the church into that position of God, no, that's not at all Christian. So yeah, and the church is human; they can get it wrong.
Yeah, that's always been my take. It's all of us that are really interpreting it. There's going to be a lot of room for error there, logically speaking, at least. Perhaps we should change subjects. We talked a lot about faith here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. You might get me
It's not
going there.
Sunday. Yeah, it's not Sunday. That was yesterday. You mentioned that you dove into a bit of wedding photography and videography a bit. I'm very interested to discover kind of what led you into that. Like, was it just an interest that you always, was in the back of your mind, something you always wanted to do, and then you just kind of dove right into it, or and how maybe getting into that has really helped you along the way? Clearly, it's connected with your Trans Canada project and gotten that going, but how has that really impacted you?
Well, I can't say it's something that I've always wanted to do. It's sort of an evolution. Life doesn't have to be about this is what I am and this is where I'm going to be, right? You grow as you go through things, and everything I've done, every career I've had, has kind of led me into the next thing. And before I was doing the photography, I was actually doing. I was working for an insurance company as a network administrator, looking after their telephone systems, right? Which is totally different, right? um, but on the side, I needed to have this creative outlet, and so I started doing the photography in different ways. Eventually, long story, but eventually I ended up doing a lot of weddings, and I managed to stick around that place a little longer than I probably should have. And they told me to go out the door, which gave me an opportunity to say, okay, well, I'll just do this thing that I'm kind of having fun doing. So it got started, and I got into that. This part of the journey, though, being trans, it has had some other difficulties that I've had to find myself something a little bit more stable. COVID has not been kind on photography and wedding industry in general, so which is why I've had to make a shift again to another career. But as I said, everything is an evolution. It all builds on each other, and all the technology background that I had certainly prepared me for doing things digitally in photography and video. and then applying that into along with the creative pieces, putting them together, and then actually for a lot of the churches creating videos for different projects and things, and then videos for the weddings and so on. And then it was just a natural progress to move into doing that as part of my life now with what's affecting my life now. So yeah, and hopefully we're all benefiting from that now.
We're coming close to the end of our evening, so I do want to make sure. I know we chatted quite a bit, but if you do have any questions for Cary, anything that's on your mind, anything you wanted to, ideas you wanted to bounce off of Cary, please ensure that you share that in the chat or the Q&A. I'm keeping an eye on that. But one thing I wanted to touch on too is the Trans Canada project, and I'm curious to know how. What has the response been like so far, and how does that really, for you, tie into your own journey with visibility? You'd mentioned that as you were trying to figure things out, there weren't a lot of folks or folks that you could connect with, especially in Canada as well. Visible individuals, and so what do you think the impact of that could have been on you, and then what has the project in that impact has had on folks so far? What's been the feedback?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to brag and say it's a huge project, with millions of views, because it's not. It's a fairly small audience relatively, but at the same time, the feedback that we've had from people is it's been very impactful. And so it is a passion project, right? It's something that has meant a lot to us, and we know it's meant a lot to the people who've been guests. And in turn, there are plenty of people out there who have commented that it has been meaningful to them as well. Our hope is that the stories that are being told are for everyone. It's for those who are maybe trying to figure out themselves and whether they're trans or not, and can find somebody in that whole group of people who they can relate to. That's like them. We also hope it's for all those people who have literally, unknowingly, never met a trans person, right? Because when you haven't met somebody, you don't really have any idea what to think of them, right? So this gives a very safe way for people to meet some of these trans people. We hope it's out there for allies too, to hear these stories and understand better what it's like to be trans. So really the videos are for absolutely everybody. But our main goal is basically just to tell those stories the way they are. We have a couple of other little side projects we do in that regard. We've started doing what we call the Trans Forum, where we bring some of the guests back and we actually talk about topics. So it's not so much the stories. We still want to keep the stories going, but the topics are kind of important for people too. And then we have another thing I just kind of rebranded as Transmission, and that's basically interviews of people who are doing things like you guys are. Maybe we'll have to have you on one of our videos now.
Oh, shucks. So we have a question here in the chat. So I had a friend who was pushing back on trans women competing in sport last week, and I felt unequipped to handle her challenges. Any ideas for how to support our trans kids?
Okay, as I said, I'm not an expert on things, and so you'll forgive me if I reference Facebook. It's not a reliable source, right? But I did read a meme recently, and again I'm gonna butcher it, but I think it definitely answers that question, because the response basically was to someone basically questioning the fact that there was a trans woman swimmer who had won this race, and how is that fair, and all the usual arguments you hear. But this response I found was really, really good. They said, you're attacking this because it's a trans woman doing this, and this is going to wreck women's sport. But were you there when and they knew better than me, and they listed out all of these different things in women's sports that were much, much, much bigger problems. and just pointing out that, why are you picking on this when you're not even mentioning any of these other things that are real issues in women's sport, right? Why are women not paid as much as men in professional sport? Why are women, not getting the same opportunities, right? Or seen in the same light as their male counterparts? And as I said, many more arguments in that regard. I thought it was brilliant because really what they were pointing out was this is not really an issue for you of women's sport being destroyed because trans women are part of the sport. This is really an issue for you because you're transphobic and you're saying, I don't like trans women, right? But it was very nicely put. And if I could find it, I would just share it. You know how Facebook goes, it's gone.
Well, once you see it, you think, "Oh, I'm going to see it again," and then you refresh your feed.
And you
It's
can
gone
never
forever,
find it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a really interesting point. That if you're, that dedicated to your care and your passion towards women's sports, you would be focusing on the plethora of other issues that are available out there. Pay equity being one of them. Visibility of women's sports and highlighting all of that is a big thing. We used to partner with a hockey league, the women's hockey league up here in Ontario, and we had events with them, and went to their Pride nights. And the next, I think it was just before the pandemic. I think they had folded, and it's for some reason it is kind of a like a anti-women, anti-female, misogynistic perspective of female sport that they for some reason it's just not as interesting, which is couldn't be further from the case. Those hockey games were killer every single time. Oh,
Yeah, I. It's funny because one of the beautiful things about being trans is that you kind of see things from both sides. Um, and I keep thinking of that song that I've looked at life from both sides now. um, I do. I perhaps didn't see so much of misogyny until I started, presenting more femme, and yet at the same time being more femme, I still remember what it was like to be in a guy's world. So it's really interesting sometimes, and I think that's something that all trans people have to offer, is that unique perspective that bridges the gap between the genders.
mhm. That's really interesting. I hadn't well, I thought of that in kind of passing, but hadn't thought of it. It's just the perspective that you just would see life differently through at this point. Obviously, people their first impression would be that you're a woman, and that's how you're presenting, and how you would like people to see you. And then that would obviously bring on all the usual stereotypes and all the usual kind of daily the microaggressions and all those unfortunate things that I guess you encounter.
Yeah.
Another question here. Any advice if you get questioned about your identity?
Um, I'm, I'm not sure I quite understand the question. Are you saying if I get questioned about my identity, how do I respond?
I guess so. I don't know if the person who, if you would be able to clarify that, whether in the chat or the Q&A.
Um, well, maybe I'll start to address it, and if they can give us a little bit more,
Mhm.
then we can address the rest of it. But as I said, I've been actually really surprised that I really haven't had it addressed. I mean, occasionally I get misgendered, um, which for me personally, again, is the weird thing too, because I still feel very non-binary, even though I'm very more femme presenting. So, you know, any pronoun is probably okay. I just steer clear of the he, him because I lived it too long and I've had enough of it. um, but most of the time when I'm out there, um, people don't question me. Like I said, it's been a huge surprise for me, and I think probably for a lot of people who are worried worried about going forward with it. That's one of the biggest concerns, that I'm going to have to face this. I'm going to have to deal with people who are not going to like me or not going to accept me the way I am, and they're going to give me a hard time. But they don't really, The worst ones have been family. And with family, you have to be a lot more delicate, right? Because they knew you who you were supposed to have been. Even though you've been this way all the time, you just were hiding it, right? I love what a friend once said. It said, it's not a transition because you're not really changing, right? It's more like a metamorphosis, right? It's more like the real you is finally coming out, right? Yeah, that's why I have the little butterfly piece at the end of that video, right? Because
I was going to say that's a callback to the butterfly coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yep, they clarified that was one of my questions dealing with family. And I know that it's still a journey for you, as you mentioned, but has there been anything that has really helped you kind of center yourself as you're kind of navigating that relationship with family? And in a way, as queer people, we're often sometimes put in a position of being the educators for our family and for our friends too. And how have you really been able to navigate that, and how have you and how has that been on you with your mental and physical health?
As I said, I think that's probably the hardest piece of the journey. My kids are absolutely amazing. They've grown up in a time when it was accepted, and they've been able to teach me things. I have a daughter who went to university for sexuality, marriage, and family, and she actually literally taught me things that I didn't know, and I've appreciated that so much. But my parents are definitely not accepting. They're loving, but they're not accepting. And that it, what I had to realize was it's a journey for them as well, right? That I can't just come at them and say, this is the way it is and that's it, right? Because they haven't known anything different, and it takes them time to realize and to come to it, right? I've had my whole life to figure it out, and and I still don't have it figured out, right? I got a better sense of it, but I kind of had to get a better sense of it. They've never had to worry about that. They don't have a frame of reference for it. And so I think we need to give them a bit of grace and a bit of time, and just try and show them that love back as well. The hardest relationship for me has been my spouse. And I, for her sake, I don't want to get into details with that. Um, but she's accepting. She loves me, and she wants me to be who I am. But that's got to be one of the most difficult things, is seeing your spouse as one thing and then now they're another, and then coming to terms with that in yourself, and what does that make you. And I know she's still going through that journey, and if you're watching this, I'm sorry for bringing it up, but I know it's all part of the journey, and I think she would understand.
And we have another question, which I think is going to be a great question to wrap up on as we're coming up to time. How do you think it's the best way to accept trans people? Which are the first steps to be an ally and humanity in trans people? Also, how to stop that sense of feeling that trans people are different?
Um,
Loaded question.
Well, it is a little bit. If you've been listening to anybody talk about allyship these days, at least the circles and things that I listen to, it's a really interesting topic, because whether you're talking about being an ally to the Black community, the Hispanic community, to women, to trans people, to any other LGBTQ group, what does it mean to be an ally, right? And it doesn't mean just to be somebody who is rah rah. It means somebody who is actually a part of the community, in a sense, right? I talked a lot about diversity and accepting that diversity and seeing the diversity in everybody. We all have something to offer. And so when you look at a trans person, don't look at them as being something separate. They are part of the world community, right? They're just another person who has something to offer. And if you're open to hear what they have to offer, that will benefit you, never mind the trans person, right? I mean, of course, it's nice to be accepted, but you can gain something from it too, right? And as far as them being different, we're all different, every one of us, right? We're just different in a way that's unusual. You know, it's not typical. So, you know, I like to talk about that bell curve. You know, do you want to be in the middle there where everybody is, or do you want to be like in the interesting parts?
Yeah, allyship, it's an interesting topic nowadays. It's almost like a double-edged sword sometimes, because you have folks who are, you know, the raw folks, and you know they're like, I'm an ally, and they've got everything, you know, they got the rainbow stuff all over the place, and or you know they're hashtagging Black Lives Matter or whatever they want to do. But then how do you kind of execute in those behaviors, and what does living allyship really look like? And it's more than just the cosmetic, and it's more than just it's participatory in a very deep level, right?
You know, not to draw it back to the Christian thing, but we used to talk about this all the time in the church, right? Like the people would come to church on Sunday and they'd pretend to be Christians, and then they go out in the week and they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't live any kind of Christian life. It was just, you know, nobody would have even known that they went to church on Sundays. And it's kind of like that with some allies, right? They come and they show and they put on a good game, but then, you know, they walk away and it means nothing to them really the rest of the week or the rest of the month or the rest of the year, you know. So yeah, it just accept people, you know, love people. I sorry, I know I probably shouldn't keep bringing it back to God, but another thing that really taught me was I was really struck by the verses that when Jesus was asked what was the greatest commandment, you know, and commandments meaning all those laws and things that the people put together, and Jesus's answer was just simply love God, love each other as you do yourself, right? That's it. Everything else is built on that. So that's all we need to do. Just love God, love each other. And I love that he said, as you do yourself, because you got to love yourself too, right?
Well, I can't think of a better way to end tonight. And it's right. You know, you gotta, in order to love others and to, you know, and if you're a person of faith, to love God and to love the Lord, you got to be able to. Love starts internally. It starts with you, and you can't provide that outward if you don't provide it to yourself. Wow. I think that's a comment in the chat, and that's, I think, perhaps that's the mic drop moment of the night. I've had a graphic for a mic drop. That's what we'd be doing there. Well, everyone, thank you.
I could drop this.
That looks very expensive. I don't want you to do that.
Oh,
no.
Amazon's got great stuff.
Well, Cary, thank you very much for spending your Monday night with us, and all of you thank you for spending your Monday night. For those of us who may have joined us kind of partway through, my apologies. Some of you may have come from our partners with Cary Community Connections. My apologies for just sending a broken link to our colleagues there. My apologies there. But the great thing about the events that we're doing here is that we've recorded the webinar. I'm going to be scrubbing it because I think I may have mentioned a name or two in there. I'm always the one. It's never the guest. It's always me. And we'll make sure we scrub that, and then we'll have it posted to our YouTube page, and we'll share that with Cary Community Connections as well. So you will have access to that. But thank you all for joining us here tonight. We'll all leave you to your Monday evenings, and have a great night. Thank you again, Cary.
Thank you for inviting me, Tristan. It's been a pleasure to be here, really. Thank you.